What a beautiful morning. Praise the Lord, e te whānau. What a beautiful morning indeed it is for us to come together as a whānau. Whānau, you can follow along with our karakia here on the big screen. We're going to have a couple of waiata also, so I invite you to stand during those times. But if you could please just follow along and respond in the parts in bold. The Lord be with you. Whakatūwhira te o mātou nutu e te ariki. Mao mātou māngai e whakapai atu ki a koe. Kia whakakororia te matua, te tama me te wairua tapu. Ko te ritinai e te timatanga. A tēnei anō i nāia nei. A ka mau tonu iho, ake, āmine. Kua hipa te pō, kua hura mai he rāhau ki mui a tātou. Kia kotahi te inoe a te nākau me te heninaro. Tātou ka haritahi tēnei rangi hō, kia tiaho tonu tau māramatanga e te atua, kia whita tonu tō mātou aroha ki a koe, aia nei ake tonu atu, āmine. E te whānau etu mo tō tātou nei waiata whakamoimiti, te waiata tūtira mai nā iwi. Mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Mai a te māramatanga, me te aroha e ngā iwi. Kia tapatahi, kia kotahi rā, tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Mai a te māramatanga, me te aroha e ngā iwi. Kia tapatahi, kia kotahi rā, tātou e. Tēnā tātou, e noho, please be seated. Te minetatanga o te kupu. Tēnā kia waiata tātou kia ihua, kia hari tātou ki te toko o tō tātou whakoranga. Waiata atu kia ihua, whakapaingia tōna ingoa, kōrerotia tōna whakoranga ia rā. Pānuitia tōna kororia ki nā iwi, tōna whakanui ki nā tō pito o te ao. And now, te whānau, I'm going to invite the Reverend Peter Barge to read our reading and lead us through a time of Lectio Divina.
Reading from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 9. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead and write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Whakarongo ki te kupu a te wairua ki te Hāhi. We enter into a time of Lectio Divina. There are two questions for you to consider as an individual, and then there's an opportunity for some group discussion. I'll read to you again the reading which we've just heard, and invite you to consider the question, what word stands out for you? Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. What word stands out for you? I'll read the text a second time and invite you to consider the question, how does the text make you feel? Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. How does the text make you feel? And if the church is the audience for this text, what is it saying to her? Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. I invite you to take a moment to consider alone your answer to the question, if the church is the audience for this text, what is it saying to her? I'll invite you in a minute into discussion with your table members. I invite you to share your responses together as a table. take another 30 seconds or so and we'll draw ourselves together.
Pass out to the people surrounding us. It doesn't matter whether they're Christians or not.
E te whānau te kaiti, the Lord be with you. Kua kona nei tātou I tō tātou ariki, ka waia te tātou.
E tō mātou, matua I te rangi, kia taputa I mā, kia tae mai tō ramatira tama, kia mea tia tau e pai ai ki runga I te whenua, kia ari te ano, ki tō te rangi. O mai kia mātou, ai anei, he taro mō mātou mō te, nei rā. Rura o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei. Ia te hunga e hara ana ki a mātou. Ua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia. E mari whakaorangia mātou I te kino. Nau hoki te rama tiratanga, te kaha me te kororia.
Make your ways known upon earth, O God, your saving power among all peoples. Renew your church in holiness. Guide the leaders of this and every nation. Let not the needy, O God, be forgotten. Make us instruments of your peace. Holy and ever-living God, by your power we are created, and by your love we are redeemed. Guide and strengthen us by your Spirit, that we may give ourselves to your service, and live each day in love to one another and to you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. In darkness and in light, in trouble and in joy, help us, Heavenly Father, to trust your love, to serve your purpose, and to praise your name, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Kia whakapaingia te ariki, whakamoimitia te atua, kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ariki o ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhina taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmine, āmine, kia ore te whānau. Ka pai. And now I'd just like to invite the Venerable Hirini Ka to come and lead us in our Wānanga this morning.
Tēnā koutou, e te Hīnota Whānui, i ngā iti piopa, e te kāhui piopa, a kia koutou i ngā mema i a kurangatira, a tēnā rā koutou katoa. I honore mōku ki te mihi atu ki a koutou. Thank you, it's an honour and a pleasure to be here this morning as part of our Wānanga. I am currently standing in for Archdeacon Susan Wallace, who isn't able to be here with us today. I'm going to do a very poor impersonation of her, but I'm also going to say that Ngāti Porou are the tuakana to her, because she's not here to deny that as well. So this morning we're going to have a discussion around theological education in our church, and particularly around the Te Pai Tāwhiti report, which has been recently released, shared. You've got a copy. Hopefully you've all read 130 pages. There'll be a test, and hopefully you pass this morning as well. We're starting off with an exercise in whakawhanaungatanga as well. So for the, and again, aroha mai, Susan was all over this until 2 days ago when she wasn't. So we're doing our best to kind of patch things together, and I think in some ways, with all the many absences we have at this hui, this could be one of the features of this General Synod in some ways as well. So we're going to do the exercise in sharing at our tables. Again, part of our wānanga, coming to know one another at our mixed tables, getting to understand one another more, to enter into conversation and te kōrero as part of our wānanga is one of the aims this morning. So I'll hand you over to Peter.
Morena anō. We have up here 4 questions for you to respond to in your groups. So there'll be a good few minutes assigned to you to do this. I've already seen some great chatter amongst your table groups, but this is an opportunity for you to share something of yourself and your story briefly through answering these questions. So what is your name and role? Who has been somebody who has influenced you in your life? So thinking about someone, a teacher, an auntie, a mentor, someone who has discipled you. And then in your role, what your connection is or your responsibility for theological education. This is within your episcopal unit. And then a final question is, what, to the best of your awareness, what does your episcopal unit prioritise in theological education? So those are the 4 questions, and they'll remain on the screen, so you're able to answer them in turn and go around. And it's really one of these things of sharing and receiving. It's not necessarily for sharing and, oh yeah, that's me too. That's morning tea too. All right. So over to you. Kia koutou.
We're going to go around and do each question first. Let's do that.
We've got another 10 minutes or so for this exercise, so as you were.
to find out about that.
We go around the circle way we're always beginning. I'm Tim McKenzie. My role is my connection to and or my responsibility to education. But I guess for my research, kind of keep an eye on next steps.
Looks like you are having some good discussions. Would you do with another 5 minutes and then wrap up? Excellent.
Going to you that today. Yeah. Thank you.
Kia ora. Hi, kia ora tātou. Kia ora. If I can have your attention, please. Thank you. That looked like it was a very rich and productive kōrero. Coming to know one another somewhat, and of course we have the rest of General Synod during our breaks, during our time, and hopefully during some of our Wānanga space as well, to continue to get to know one another's concerns, hopes, dreams, visions for our church, and this morning with the focus in particular on theological education. As I was saying this morning, we're focusing on theological education. Tomorrow morning, and I've got to apologise, of course, for an all-male panel this morning. Again, apologies for Susan. And tomorrow, the Wānanga is on women's leadership in the church. And then Wednesday morning, we have Father Gregory Boyle coming, who was just awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom 2 weeks ago. So it'll be a great honour and also hopefully insight and inspiration to hear from him as well. Again, the purpose of these Wānanga is for us to spend time to share, to discern, to dive deep, well, as deep as we can within limited time, into particular areas. Because as you know, with General Synod, we're often going literally through the motions. And so the Wānanga is an opportunity to explore different issues to some depth, but also just to start building that conversation, that Wānanga amongst us. Wānanga as a noun is a place of discernment, of learning. Wānanga is a verb, and the best definition of Wānanga is logos. That just made me sound very clever. But I'd like to thank Archbishop Don for that line, so kia ora. I'd like to introduce the panel members this morning. I am Archdeacon Susan Wallace. I'm going to get in trouble for these jokes. She'll be watching the live stream. And we're just live streaming the Wānanga and aspects of it as well to capture. We had quite a few watching Omahu last night, people sending in comments from around the church. So our panellists this morning, I'd like to introduce Bishop Peter Carroll, Bishop of Christchurch, and Faye Tevi, and the expertise they bring, but particularly this morning, Bishop Peter, a member of Te Kōtaitanga, and Faye is a member of St John's College Trust Board as well, both parties who initiated Te Pai Tawhiti, this report, this search for a future in theological education. So, all my te pakitanga here for our... I'm turning around because I'm not exactly sure what the next slide's going to be. It's great. So, Te Pai Tawhiti, a report from the mists of time, otherwise known as pre-COVID. Everything just feels we should have a PC time, pre-COVID. When one of the many roles of Te Kōtaitanga is to seek, to discern and to work with the ministry bodies in particular, strategy for theological education. And it was a piece of work that Kōtaitanga decided to take up, and we're going to have a little discussion about where this has come from, and also, of course, where it's going to, and we can have that discussion collectively. But just a very quick summary, the idea was developed by Te Kōtaitanga and with the support of St John's College Trust Board, who funded the initiative. The report was undertaken by Steve Taylor and Animo Gould, who, again, it was a huge work over many years, greatly interrupted by COVID. And I think we have to really take that into account. For example, they couldn't really get to Polynesia, to Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, because of COVID. It was just a very difficult process. Also, things like the lack of data across the church, but we'll come back to some of that as well. Some of the challenges they encountered as researchers in developing this Te Pai Tawhiti. And Te Pai Tawhiti speaks of the distant horizons, where our journeys might go to. I'm just going to give you a few facts. This is to get us started from Te Pai Tawhiti. Again, I would say this is my own perspective on the research. It was challenging, the lack of data sources in the church. We don't have good collective data across the church. That was one of the great discoveries of this report. The way I think about it is, Stephen Animoa had to almost create interlocking fields of evidence. So they got one imperfect piece of evidence and another imperfect piece of evidence, and by the time they've finished, and you can read the report obviously, it creates a picture, the best picture they could put together. So for example, the clergy directory is one of the more significant pieces of data we have in the church, but as a lot of you will know, it's voluntary. We are pretty sure a lot of tikanga Māori do not fill out the clergy directory regularly. There were big gaps in that, for just picking an example of the data source. The other one is, this is a bit complicated, but Steve had to hand enter all the data from the clergy directory into an Excel table, which took him days and days because we couldn't find a readily accessible source of the data. So this is a thing we need to probably remedy as a church at some stage, our data. But just some points. Anglican church affiliation, now the size it was in 1901. The point being the population of Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia was much, much smaller in 1901. I'm sorry I can't give you an exact figure of our population size, but even though we've peaked and come down, it certainly hasn't kept pace with the growth of population, I think is the point there. Most clergy are trained in local diocese in Huiamorangi. Again, these are Stephen Animoa's, some of their findings and conclusions, resulting in duplication. Decadal trends in communion participation continue. Some dioceses will no longer be serving the sacraments by 2040. So, and I see Professor Peter Lynham here, whose work on the census data, for example, is very important, but we're on track, these are my words, essentially to disappear, statistically. It's quite a brutal statistic, nevertheless, it's supported by data, by evidence. While similar numbers of women has been ordained as men, there are fewer women in senior levels of church leadership. And tomorrow the panel will be presenting further data on this particular indicator as well. And Anglicans are the least diverse, most European of churches in Aotearoa. Again, these you have the report in front of you. Really encourage you, if you haven't yet engaged with it, there's a lot of data in there, a lot of evidence, big gaps too. We really, part of it, really encouraging people to say, well, here's some extra further sources we could look at. This is not by any means the end of this conversation, the report. But it was significant, it was large, and I think influential is one way of putting it. And broadly, the report asks how we can form ministry and mission participants for changed and changing times. That was part of the brief to Stephen Animoa, that as a church we are entering in, and as a world we are entering into some significant changes. Technology alone, I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with AI, but if you're in the education realm, AI is just really starting to take over in so many spaces. If you get ChatGPT to write a sermon for you in te reo, it's not bad. It's not bad. And we're in this now. This is not 20 years from now. This is now. And war and conflict and climate and COVID and just preparing ourselves for the future, whatever that looks like. And of course, what it means to be Anglican in all of that. Sorry. So I will turn now to our panel. Faye's pointing at Bishop Peter. So just to give you a heads up, I have some questions. They're very difficult to answer questions, so I'm just giving a heads up. First of all, would either of you have any general comments about the Pai Tawhiti or what we've heard already? Okay.
Thank you, Hirani. I'm, by the way, a slight latecomer to the report in the sense that I wasn't part of Te Kotautanga when the report was commissioned, and I came into the last stages of the report being formed, and am now, of course, part of taking it forward as we're doing, for example, on this occasion. The report nails down where we are at as a church, and I think the chapter on the data points around everything from attendance, sacramental acts, age of clergy, timelines for when different parts of our church will statistically be predicted to disappear, and eventually all of us, with the possible exception of your own parish, which of course won't ever disappear. It's sobering, and if we were as a General Synod, Te Hīnota Whānui, to kind of move past that and not pretend that bit of the report is there, we would do all the people we represent here a grave disservice. So the report highlights that we simply need to do better as church. We have a Royal Commission report coming at the end of June which highlights another area where we need to do better as a church. So the question then coming out of Te Pai Tawhiti in respect of education, training, formation is in what ways might we do better, and better here could include differently, but I also think includes the things we always need to be good at doing and to keep doing, and with the Royal Commission report to the side shining a light on and saying in doing those things such as safe ministry to the absolute best that we can do them, and to do that in every year and in every generation. The report is helpfully not too prescriptive. It doesn't say, so this is the recipe for what we must do between now and 2040. But I think it also doesn't give us the option of saying, oh, that's an interesting set of possibilities, we're going to do our thing over here. We should take seriously the directions it suggests to us flow out of the research, the really good research that is in the report. Your turn.
Thank you. Given the fact that this is a pre-COVID request, I take my cue from there, because the report in and of itself basically launches the discussion and the reflection around theological education for the Pacific region. For Tikanga Pacifica, it doesn't conclude, or it doesn't make recommendations thereof. Eh? And so our point of departure is actually the Te Pai Tawhiti report. And so we're looking from that sense outwards.
Kia ora. Just, if we can, briefly, for both of you, how would you characterise theological education in our church at present, or how has it been recently? So it's a very big question, but how would you think about it? How's it been in recent years? Any characteristics that jump out to you?
Well, you probably want to get to morning tea without me still holding forth. I think we're in a challenging space around theological education and formation, partly because of all the challenges we face as a church, and so if we ask the question, how do we meet those challenges to evangelise, to do pastoral care well, to do innovation well, we're looking at all forms of different training that will help us with that, and we're looking at how can we use online methods, how can we train locally, what does it mean to have I'll call it the college of our church, but it's not the only college in our church, St John's College. There are different answers to differing possibilities, but to push that through to a few summary phrases, I think there's a question, do we have too many options for training and ministry formation in our church? What is the value we place on St John's College? This synod, in my experience, is often called the college Aotearoa of this church, and yet when we see how many people are trained for ordained ministry who do not go to the college, what is our actual valuation of the college? I think the report also highlights the question, we have this other taonga, which is the St John's College Trust Board, and the huge hundreds of millions of New Zealand dollars worth of assets, and an amazing distribution that funds all sorts of things, and including the lives of many people in this room. Are we making the best use of that? Have we got the right foci for education across our church in its various ways, including needs of church schools, and some recent explorations have highlighted some very significant financial needs for church schools in Polynesia, and some church schools in these islands here, Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I think we're in a messy place, and we could do with some clarifications.
Kia ora, thank you, Bishop. Faye?
Yeah, I think I guess as a body of churches, I mean, as a body, theological education has often been, I guess in my perception, almost like a straitjacket. You almost had to put yourself into a straitjacket to get into theological education. And it often had a one-stream type of outcome. Just this year, over the last few weeks, Diocese of Polynesia, we've launched into a theological education program on disaster preparedness. And that is just often like a divergence from the normative, conventional way of looking at theological education. Why? Because the context demands it. We have to look at theological education from a disaster preparedness perspective. We cannot afford to get our priests to go out into parishes and not know how to do disaster preparedness. That's, it's almost like asking them to fail. And so this openness or the opening of theological education to focus on other issues that are relevant to the lives of the people from a different perspective, I think that's where we are moving towards in the diocese.
Kia ora, thank you. And so, significant change required, I think I hear from both of you, and the opportunity in front of us. I think one figure worth considering is by 2040, on current distribution, the St John's College Trust Board is going to distribute around $330 million for theological education. It's almost a third of $1 billion. So Paitawhiti is the primary attempt to find some focus and direction for that massive resource going forward. In some ways, it's what a younger people might say, hashtag good problem, as opposed to we've got no money and we need to do theological education. So there's some good opportunities here as well, I think, being hopeful as part of this conversation. As we've heard, there have been many people involved in this report, from Koteitanga, the Trust Board, and we're just the ones who happen to be here today to speak to some of this. We've got an exercise for you. We're going to hand out papers quickly. I'm looking for Peter. We're going to talk quickly about the journeys. Again, hopefully you'll get a chance to have a better look, if you haven't already, at this report, and hopefully many of you have. We're assuming that there are some people at your table who know something about this report. We've had a Koteitanga forum, there have been discussions, the Waka Mātauranga, our Tikanga Māori ministry bodies discuss this. So we're hoping there's enough knowledge at each table to help inform one another. But the recommendations of the report, Stephen Onimore called journeys. It's within the kind of metaphorical framework of and theological framework of the report. There are 7 journeys outlined in the report. We're going to get you to do a quick exercise as we hand out these pieces of paper quickly. I'm getting a thumbs up. We're going to get you to do a quick exercise. You can even do it on a piece of paper yourself, really. The 7 journeys, we're going to get you individually to prioritise these journeys. Just a very quick exercise. What you think your Episcopal unit would prioritise. Now, one journey is around mātauranga Mihinare and mātauranga Moana. We're not putting that in scope. In other words, I think I'd say there's a consensus from Tikanga Māori and Tikanga Pacifica that our mātauranga doesn't get shoved down the list somewhere. So, but let's talk about the other 6 in here. And I'll just go through these as quickly and succinctly as I can. Elevate Talanoa Ako. This journey is partly about, it's about a lot of things, but it's partly about the silos within our church, effectively. A lot of duplication, a lot of replication, how we can avoid that within our church. There are other aspects to it too you're welcome to discuss. The next one is the woven and charism-based approach to ordination formation. Some of this is about duplication as well, and around our models for ordination formation and training. New voyages, and particularly voyages what we might call outside the church, outside traditional models of ministry and mission, developing those as a whole church. The 4th journey is around tamariki, whānui, parents, intergenerational, how we might prioritise that. The next journey, agile funding, new models of funding that are more responsive, more flexible, more measurable perhaps, some different ways of thinking about funding rather than the primarily historic model we use at the moment. You got X for the last few years, you'll get X plus Y for the next few years. And equity might be part of that discussion. And the last one is amplify informal education. So what are other modes of education? And Faye was talking about that briefly as well. So, very quickly, as an individual, we'll get you to write down from 1 to 6 how you think your Episcopal unit would rank these journeys. They're not all equal, they're very porous, it's kind of apples and oranges, but just have a quick go. I'll give you 3 minutes. Starting 2 minutes ago. So just individually rank them. We're going to do a group exercise next.
I think Susan's going to be watching this.
So the bits of paper that are handed out have text on them, but getting some labels too. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Kia ora, you've got another 30 seconds. nicely done. Just individually, just 1 to 6. Come on, just put them randomly if you need to. It's a methodology. It was Pentecost yesterday. Be led by the Spirit in your ranking. Kapai, we all done? We've done 1 to 6? Excellent. It doesn't really matter because now we're coming to the heart of the exercise. Kia ora tātou, if I can grab your attention. Right. Now, in your table groups, collectively, here's a real challenge. At a table, you need to rank the journeys. So you need to come up with some sort of consensus as a table and rank these journeys from 1 to 6. So, good luck. And again, it's an exercise, it's really just to provoke discussion. They're not really rankable in that way, and rankable is not even a word, but it's to provoke discussion. I'll put it back on the journeys. Oh. Aspirational. Yes, this is a forward-looking report. So where are we going? Okay, you've got it on that bit of paper, hopefully at your table. Sorry. Anyway, eh? Okay. By popular demand. One person from each table, please pay attention to me for a second. One person. I know that's impossible. We need one person from each table to go to that QR code and then follow what happens next. You're going to submit your table's rankings. Kia ora. One young at heart person to do this exercise. No, young at heart, Archbishop. Oh, sorry. My face is a terrible QR code. Just, you won't like what pops up. Yeah. Like genius.com. Humble.com. Hopefully every table's got someone to do their ranking. Kia ora, and submit it when you're ready.
It's always difficult when you give me 2 alternatives. So, I mean, the short answer.
Okay, so number 4.
Don't look at the screen. Just don't let it impact you. Don't think agile funding is more important than our children.
Just passing by.
Alright, kia ora tātou, 2 more minutes, or we're done. We found consensus. Okay, kia ora, anyone not submitted yet? Any table? Would you like us to come and help you? Any table? We can provide bigger screens, whatever.
Secret agenda is
Vote early, vote often. Kia ora tātou. It looks like we've all had a chance to have a discussion and to submit our thoughts. Kei te pai? Are we really not? Kia ora tātou. Okay, so as you can all see up here, again, it was a quick exercise to discuss the voyages as have been presented within the report, just to create discussion, but also gives us a little sense of direction, of priority. And I think, it's not unexpected, but it's a beautiful thing, and congratulations that we're clearly prioritising Ministry of Children, Youth, Young Adults and Families as a church. But again, how do you really compare that with agile funding? So a little bit of apples and oranges there as well. Creating an educational waka to train in new mission voyages, agile funding frameworks, elevate talanoa and ako, so those 3 are reasonably even, develop a woven and charism-based approach to ordinand formation, and then informal education. Again, I don't think we'll necessarily, it gives us an indication of some direction there, but hopefully you also in this little exercise had some discussion around how we think about priorities and even what are agile funding frameworks, what can it look like? If anyone's seen the work by Impact Lab, for example, there's some really interesting models around measurement, around assessment, going around at the moment. So there's lots to discuss in here and it needs to be ongoing. But I'll ask our panel if they have any reflections on what we're seeing here.
Well, an obvious reflection is that quite a bit of getting progress on higher priorities is actually to be clear about what agile funding lowest priority here, looks like, because often we're finding, and I know we find it in my diocese, to make certain advances in certain areas, we often wish the funding was available in a more flexible way. And this is something that is being worked on in the conversation between Te Ako Tāitanga and the Trust Board. In other words, this is what we're ranking up here is important, and it'll be very helpful, I think, for Te Ako Tāitanga and I'm sure the Trust Board to see the number one priority. But it will also be important that we're working, ironically, on the sixth priority as well to enable the first priority to... Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I misread that. It was 6, wasn't it? It is the 3rd. Thank you for your correction, Archbishop. Okay. Amplify and formal education. Okay. I'll stop while I'm ahead and stop spouting foolishness. Number 3 is important, along with number 1. Should have gone to Specsavers.
I think from my... one of the interesting ways that that's currently being looked at in terms of theological education is to look sideways and look at what the other theological schools are doing in the region, in the Pacific region, to see how we can use the strengths of these theological education institutions to then lift the overall theological education standard in the region, rather than just at St. John's or at St. John's Training College in Fiji or at Bishopdale, but then to look at how we can help each other lift the overall theological education standard in the Pacific region. That includes New Zealand. That's just one comment.
Kia ora, and the Diocese of Polynesia is hosting a gathering in August of principals from across the region of theological colleges to facilitate debates like that, which are incredibly important, as Faye said. Just to, as we're coming towards the end of this, first of all, the three of us, I think, were reflecting quickly how reassuring it is to have this discussion this morning. For those of us who've been involved with theological education and funding arrangements for many years, and I'd like to acknowledge the various members of Ko Taitanga and the Trust Board in the room, and also those who can't be here. There's been a lot of work over many years to bring this to fruition. But finally, we've got a way to kind of have the conversation, as opposed to, I don't know if any of you remember, but would kind of do a blank canvas approach to it at General Synod, which basically left us with a blank canvas again. So now we have a pretty rigorous and solid piece of work from which we can start talking about our future. And I don't know, it's very reassuring, I think we found. What we're almost taking it for granted already, what this report can offer us in terms of creating a foundation for Wānanga going forward. So thanks. In fact, I'd like to acknowledge, because I'm not on it anymore, all the members of Ko Taitanga and the Trust Board for facilitating this report. All my fucking bugging. And yes, as we go forward to thinking about where this report is going. And so that is a final question. Where is this report going? If that's not too broad a question. Where are we planning to take these discussions?
Well, literally, we're planning to take the report to Samoa for the next meeting of Te Ako Tāitanga as we move into the next phase of Te Ako Tāitanga's consideration of the report. The specific challenge I think Te Ako Tāitanga has with the report is how to take the flexibility in the report with some sense of emerging direction from the report, and the survey here this morning is a part of that, because if we're to encourage all the Episcopal units as they make their applications for St John's funds to not only be strategic with respect to the needs of the Episcopal unit, but also strategic with respect to our overall sense of where our church is at and where we're heading through these next 16 years, then we need to clarify what messaging we're going to be giving to applicants for funding from the Trust Board. I mean, that's not the only issue, funding, but equally funding is what makes any aspect of strategic envisioning actually possible in the doing. So this Wānanga this morning is part of an ongoing conversation through these months, but the next funding round is focused on what happens in 2025 through to 2027, so we don't exactly have an infinitely flexible amount of time in which to put some specific wheels on this report and give direction to where those wheels are going.
Kia ora, thank you.
I'm looking at my chair, Maui, who's being very reflective there at the same time. But just to say here that the from the Trust Board's perspective, we are moving into a strategic reflection phase where we will be doing a lot of discerning together with the report and together with Te Kotahitanga as to the next steps. And it will take, as Bishop said, those amount of years until 2027 to do that. And I think we'll be coming back to the Synod with the outcomes. But really, may I just remind ourselves that, you know, I found last night's opening and Zane, where's Zane? The reflection around the report that we had on the table, the 10-year plan. And of course, we're looking here at 2040. The report mentions 2040, where we'd want to be. But may I just say this, the sixth assessment report of the UNFCCC places the target at 2037, that we need to be under 1.5 degrees by 2037. So that brings the 2050 margin that we are always talking about in terms of climate change down to 2037, which aligns more or less with the 2040 target. But if we say this, by 2037, if we have not changed the way we live, we will all go under. And last night was a sobering reminder of that. And so put that on the table, think about it. It's not just 2040. We might not be here in 2040. And some of our islands might not be here in 2040 as well. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Again, yes, very sobering. The context that we're talking about here isn't just our funding arrangements, right? It's climate, it's conflict. Also, and just my personal reflection, equity. You'll find equity is not an explicit voyage in this. I think the conversation's been that it's inherent and built in throughout the report. Just to remind us, for Tikanga Māori, this isn't theological education plus. This is our entire church economy, really. If you took it away tomorrow, we would struggle to be here, would struggle to thrive and fulfill our potential as a church as well in particular. So the stakes for this are immense. Getting this right is crucial as well in a range of ways. But we thank you for your time this morning, and we encourage the conversation to continue over hopefully not just this upcoming cup of tea, but now we have a kind of a language, a framework with the Paitawhiti, imperfect as it might be, and yet it's a basis for further wānanga, and that's really what we're seeking, and as Bishop Peter said, to make decisions in the short term as well over the coming years. So kia ora tātou, thank you to our panellists, thank you to all for the wānanga, and let's give ourselves an applause. Kia ora. I will now release you 1 minute early for morning tea. Do not waste that 1 minute. Make the most of it. Flourish. Kia ora tātou. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the sacrifice of... Thank you very much.